Let's get some analysis. James Dorsey joins us now from Singapore. He's a senior fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, focused on the Middle East and North Africa. James, thanks so much for your time for us on Sunday. So simply put, Iran can sell weapons to anyone and buy weapons from anyone. But having in mind the economic crisis and its defense policy, this is highly unlikely.
Well, they're able in principle to sell and buy, subject, of course, to the U.S. sanctions, which many countries will not want to violate. What is probably going to happen is, of course, that Iran will want to sell. It needs to sell if it can because of its financial problems as a result of the U.S. sanctions. In terms of buying, it's probably going to be more limited. It's first and foremost going to want to buy parts that are important to weapons that they build in Iran itself, certain kinds of engines, optical lenses, that kind of thing. In terms of larger equipment, they may want to go for the Russian anti-missile defense system, the S-400. But for the rest, it's going to probably be more symbolic. So with other words, if they want to buy a Russian fighter aircraft, it's going to be very few and not so much to build an air force as to show that they can.
Right. And James, does this mean that the 2015 nuclear deal lives on despite the fact that the U.S. pulled out?
Well, I think it's wait and see. Clearly, the Iranians have wanted to keep the nuclear agreement in place, even if they have lessened their commitments to that agreement. A lot will depend on what happens in the November election. But even then, it's not good if Joe Biden becomes U.S. president. It's not going to be an automatic return to negotiations with Iran. For one, the United States will want to broaden the negotiations to include issues like ballistic missiles and proxies. And Iran, for its part, has already said, you've walked away, you've got to return unconditionally and also compensate us for the damages imposed by what they see as illegal sanctions.
Now, James, having in mind everything that's going on, and we are weeks away from the U.S. election, who will sell Iran weapons in these times, even if they decide to do it?
I think we've got to wait and see. The obvious candidates are Russia and China, and a lot will depend on the degree to which Russia and China would want to further strain their relations with the United States. And that, again, is going to depend on who wins the U.S. election. And if Joe Biden wins, what his approach is going to be towards Russia and China. So I think at this point, it's a question mark that really your guess is as good as mine.
Right, but it's still good news for Iran. They see this as a one point for them, having in mind that the U.S. was so against this.
Well, they clearly see this as a victory. Lifting the arms embargo was one of the things that the Iranians wanted to achieve by concluding the nuclear agreement. So the fact that it has produced that is a political victory and a public relations victory, and clearly a defeat for the United States in the sense that it could not get this the snapback sanctions through the United Nations Security Council. But facts on the ground remain difficult for Iran.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks so much for that insight. James Dorsey, live for us from Singapore. He's a senior fellow at Rajaratnam School of International Studies.